My name is Sarah Wilkins Reed. I am 34 years old, and 4 years ago, on the night before Father's Day, my life quietly split into a before and an after. I opened WhatsApp with no sense of danger, only to discover that I had been erased from the very place where my family once existed. The group chat called Wilkins Family, created by my father to organize holidays and birthdays, was gone. When I scrolled back through the messages, my breath caught at a post sent at 9:17 p.m. It read, "Reminder Father's Day dinner at the club tomorrow, 6 p.m. sharp. All my children will be there. All my successful children." Sarah chose to become a lowly employee. I no longer see her as my daughter. Please don't mention her name. Underneath, my sister Rebecca replied with a heart emoji. My brother Daniel answered with a single word. Understood. No one asked why. No one defended me. In that moment, sitting alone on the edge of my bed in my small apartment outside Boston, I didn't cry or scream. Something inside me simply went silent. What my father could not imagine was that 4 years later, I would be standing on the stage of that same city's hall, shaking hands with the mayor in front of hundreds of people, while he sat somewhere in the audience, uninvited, waiting for recognition that would never come. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. I closed the app, took a slow breath, and chose not to fight, not to explain, not to beg. I blocked my father, then my sister, then my brother. I deleted the group and let silence take over. That silence lasted 4 years, and within it, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. Before I tell you what happened on that stage, take a moment to like and subscribe if this story resonates with you. Where are you watching from? And have you ever been rejected by your own family simply because of the path you chose? Now let me take you back to where it all truly began. Growing up in the quiet colonial streets of outer Boston, Massachusetts, the Wilkins family appeared flawless to anyone looking in from the outside. Our two-story house with white shutters and a perfectly trimmed lawn was the kind of place neighbors envied, the sort that screamed stability and success without ever saying a word. My father, Thomas Wilkins, had spent decades building a construction company from the ground up before retiring at 58, with enough to coast comfortably. He filled his days at the local golf club, trading stories about multi-million-dollar projects and casually name-dropping clients who mattered in our circle. To him, worth was measured in contracts, signed square footage delivered, and the quiet respect he commanded from men in pressed khakis. My mother, Linda Wilkins, made homemaking look like a full-time career. She never left the house without a designer handbag slung over her arm, and every dinner party she hosted felt like a carefully staged photo op. Crystal glasses, aligned napkins, folded just so everything positioned to whisper old money, even though our money was still new enough to need the reminder. My sister Rebecca was 38, a financial advisor working out of a sleek office in downtown Boston. She managed portfolios for executives and inherited wealth, and she made sure everyone knew it. At family gatherings, she arrived in sharp blazers and subtle jewelry that caught the light, her phone always vibrating with alerts from the market. She posted carefully curated photos of rooftop dinners overlooking the harbor weekend, escapes to the Cape, and the latest limited edition watch resting on her wrist against a linen tablecloth. My brother Daniel, 40, was the corporate lawyer who handled mergers and acquisitions for mid-sized firms. He drove a Mercedes that he parked prominently at every event, and his wife Megan collected designer handbags with the same methodical focus some people apply to wine or stamps. They had the polished life that looked effortless online, even if it required constant maintenance to keep the shine. Then there was me, the youngest, the one who never slotted neatly into the family picture. I finished high school with grades strong enough for a full scholarship to a top state university in business administration, the exact track Rebecca had followed a decade earlier. My father had already started mentioning it at the club, telling anyone who would listen that another child was on the way to the executive suite. But that summer I volunteered at the community center down the block, helping families navigate housing forms, job applications, and basic services that could shift an entire month for someone. I watched a single mother cry tears of relief when her application for subsidized childcare finally went through. I helped an elderly man fill out paperwork that kept him in his home another year. By the end of August, I knew business school wasn't for me. I called my father that night to explain I was turning down the scholarship and majoring in community administration instead. The silence on the line lasted so long I counted the seconds. When he spoke, his tone was cold and final. "You're throwing your life away for desk work, and people who won't even thank you." He didn't attend my graduation. He claimed a prior commitment at the golf club. Rebecca sent a card with a $50 check and a short note. "Good luck with your little office job." I cashed it. I needed groceries. But I never forgot the subtext in those words. "You chose less. You chose wrong. And we will make sure you remember it every time you look back." The exclusion didn't arrive in one dramatic blow. It seeped in slowly over the next few months, each incident carving a little deeper until the cuts felt routine. Thanksgiving that year unfolded like clockwork. I drove to my parents' house with a homemade pumpkin pie I had spent the morning perfecting the crust flaky from a recipe I had tweaked over years. As I stepped into the dining room, my plate was set at a folding card table shoved against the wall, the spot usually reserved for children too small for the grown-up table. My father looked up from carving the turkey and said without missing a beat, "We ran out of room at the main table. Sarah, you don't mind, right? You're so good with the kids anyway." I was 30. I forced a smile, sat down and ate while conversation flowed around me from the long oak table where Rebecca and Daniel held court, their plates gleaming under the chandelier. Christmas cut sharper. I had spent weeks knitting my father a scarf in charcoal gray cashmere, the precise shade he favored for his golf sweaters, every stitch deliberate. When he opened it, he lifted the fabric for a moment, gave a polite half smile and said, "How handmade." Then he turned to Rebecca, who had gifted him monogrammed golf balls from an exclusive pro shop, and launched into 20 minutes of praise for the quality, the packaging, the thoughtful choice. My scarf disappeared onto the hallway coat rack. 2 months later, I found it there, still wrapped in tissue paper tags, carefully reinserted as if it had never been touched. The last blow landed on my father's birthday in early 2020. I called a few days earlier to confirm dinner plans. He answered with the same measured regret he used for canceling tea times. "The restaurant only has 6 seats available, Sarah. Your mother and I, Rebecca and her date, Daniel and Megan. You understand we have to prioritize the family that's succeeding." 6 seats? I wasn't one of them. I hung up and sat in silence. Later that week, when I mentioned my remaining student loans were due and asked if he could help with a small bridge loan to cover the payment, he interrupted before I finished. "Figure it out yourself. You made your choices." No pause, no sympathy, just a clean refusal. My friend Nicole Hayes, who I had worked with since my first days at the community center, began picking up on the shift. We met for coffee after a long shift, and she studied my face over her cup. "Sarah, you've been quieter lately. Something's off with your family, isn't it?" I told her fragments: the table, the scarf, the birthday, the loan, enough to let her see the pattern without unloading everything at once. She listened, then reached across and held my hand for a moment. Those small acts of presence from Nicole became the first steady light in what was turning into a very shadowed space. Those moments I often wondered to myself whether I truly wasn't worthy of my family's love, or if it was simply because I had chosen a different path from theirs. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m., the night before Father's Day. Nicole's name lit up the screen. I answered, and her voice came through shaky and urgent. "Sarah, they removed you from the family group. Your dad did it tonight. I'm sending screenshots, check them now." I opened WhatsApp, scrolled to the Wilkins family chat, and my name was gone. The messages Nicole forwarded appeared instantly. My father's post from earlier that evening read, "Reminder, Father's Day dinner at the club tomorrow, 6 p.m. sharp. All my children will be there. All my successful children." Sarah chose to become a lowly employee. I no longer see her as my daughter. "Please don't mention her name." Rebecca replied with a single heart emoji. Daniel wrote, "Understood, Dad." The chat ended there. No one else typed a word, no questions, no hesitation, just silent agreement. I sat on the edge of my bed, the room dark except for the phone's blue glow. Nicole's voice message arrived seconds later, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know if I should tell you, but you deserve to know. Your mom asked Rebecca to remove you last week, but she only got around to it tonight. Call me if you need anything. I'm here." I played it twice, the tremor in her voice slicing through the quiet. I saved every screenshot to a folder I named Proof, then stared at the images until the timestamps and emojis burned into my memory. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A calm settled over me, cold and certain. If my father wanted me erased, I would vanish completely, deliberately, without a trace. I blocked his number first, then Rebecca's, then Daniel's. I deleted the group chat, cleared the app's cache, and removed any trace of it from my phone. The next morning, Father's Day arrived in perfect silence. No calls rang. No texts arrived asking why I wasn't there. No awkward apologies or half-hearted invitations. I made coffee-sorted paperwork from the community center and walked the neighborhood path alone. For the first time in 30 years, I sent nothing. No card, no message, no forced well wishes. I let the absence speak louder than any confrontation ever could. That night, I lay in the dark, eyes fixed on the ceiling. If a family could erase you over a job title, were you ever really part of them at all? But I had no idea that this silence would open the door to an entirely new life. Months after that quiet Father's Day, I started rebuilding in small, deliberate steps in the familiar streets of outer Boston. One Saturday afternoon, I attended a community event at the local center, a simple gathering for families to learn about local resources. That's where I met James Reed. He was there with his 5-year-old daughter, Olivia, a bright-eyed girl with golden curls who clung to his leg while he explained sustainable gardening to a group of kids. James owned a small landscaping business that focused on community projects, restoring parks, planting trees in neglected lots, helping neighborhoods look cared for. His wife had passed away from cancer 2 years earlier, and he carried himself with a quiet strength that drew people in. We talked briefly about the center's programs, then exchanged numbers so he could bring Olivia to one of our after-school workshops. What started as coffee after the event turned into regular conversations, then picnics in the park near my apartment. James never pushed for details about my family. He just listened when I shared bits and pieces. One afternoon under a wide oak tree, as Olivia chased butterflies nearby, he looked at me and said simply, "Family isn't always blood. It's who shows up when everything else falls apart." Those words stayed with me. 2 years later, we married in that same park, under the same oak tree, with a handful of friends, and Olivia as our flower girl. The ceremony was small, no big venue, no elaborate dress, just vows exchanged on a blanket with wildflowers we had picked that morning. I officially adopted Olivia that same year. The day the paperwork came through, she handed me a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, she had written, "My mom, my dad, me." I keep that drawing on my desk at work. Some days when the weight feels heavy, I pull it out and remember what matters most. I enrolled in a master's program in leadership and community development, taking classes at night and during summer sessions while working full-time. Papers were written at midnight after Olivia was asleep, study notes reviewed during lunch breaks. When a position opened for assistant manager at the community center, I applied. James recused himself from the hiring committee since he served on the board, but the panel chose me anyway. My track record spoke for itself. Programs I had started, families I had helped, the quiet ways I showed up every day. Success started arriving in small waves, steady and real. But somewhere in the background, my old family lingered like a shadow I couldn't quite shake. A local newspaper published a feature titled, "Local Employee Rises to Director," highlighting my new role leading community programs in outer Boston. The article included a photo of me speaking with volunteers at the center, the headline emphasizing how our services had expanded under my leadership. Nicole called me that evening, her tone a mix of excitement and unease. Sarah Rebecca just shared the article in the family group chat. She captioned it, "Isn't this our Sarah?" Your mom saw it right away and called Rebecca immediately. I overheard them at Aunt's. They're upset. You succeeded without telling them, and they're already planning to show up at your next event. The following day, an email landed from my father with the subject, "From your father." It opened, "Dearest Sarah. I saw the wonderful news about your promotion. I always knew you had it in you. We should meet for lunch soon. I'd love to hear about everything you've accomplished. Father's Day is coming up. It would mean so much to have the family together again. No apology, no reference to the 4 years of silence, no recognition of the message that had severed me from them. Just an invitation pretending the past had never happened, as if I had merely been on a long vacation." A few days later, Rebecca called from a blocked number. Her voice was smooth and practiced the tone she used with high-net-worth clients. "Sarah, it's been too long. Dad hasn't been feeling well, and he's been asking about you. He really wants to see you. We all do. I asked what was wrong. Just stress. You know how he gets. But he misses you." I didn't buy it. I phoned Nicole that night. She confirmed my suspicion. "Your dad was at the golf club yesterday laughing with his buddies. This isn't about health, it's about the article. They're contacting you because you're making headlines now." Then my former colleague Ryan Foster messaged me screenshots from the family chat he had received through a shared contact. The messages were fresh. My father wrote, "Wonderful news. Sarah is being honored at the community director ceremony next month. It's getting local coverage. I've confirmed our attendance. We'll arrive early, sit in the family section, and join her for photos. Rebecca, wear your navy dress. Daniel, bring Megan. This is an opportunity to show everyone the Wilkins family stands together." Rebecca replied, "Already picked out my outfit." "Should I bring flowers?" Daniel wrote. "I'll clear my schedule." Good PR move. No one asked if I wanted them present. No one suggested a private conversation or apology first. They were orchestrating a public appearance to borrow my success. At that moment, I realized some people only return when they see your success, not when they see your pain, and it made me wonder how many years I had lost before understanding that. They didn't want me back. They wanted the image of me. We gathered around my kitchen table that night, Nicole on video call, James beside me as we planned the ceremony. Nicole suggested barring them at the door, but I shook my head. If I do that, I'm the ungrateful daughter who shut out her family. That's the story they'll tell everyone. James nodded. "Let them come. Don't mention them in your speech. If they try to get on stage, tell the truth. The absence will speak louder than any confrontation." I agreed. We decided I would thank only the people who had actually stood by me. 3 days before the event. Dr. Barbara Klein, my mentor from my early days at the community center, called. Her voice was firm and no nonsense. "Sarah, your father contacted the ceremony coordinator. He requested to speak during the family remarks portion to say a few words about raising you." My grip tightened on the phone. I turned it down. "I've known you for years. If you wanted him involved, you would have said so yourself. I'm introducing you and I'll talk about your work, your dedication, what you've built, not your last name or who raised you. You earned this. Nobody gets to rewrite it." I thanked her, the weight lifting slightly. The night before the ceremony, I sat alone at the table with a blank notepad and a cup of tea. Olivia had gone to bed waving from the doorway. "Good luck tomorrow, Mom. You're going to be amazing." James gave me space in the living room. I wrote slowly. I thanked my colleagues at the center, Dr. Klein, for seeing potential in me when I was just starting, the board for believing in my vision. Then I turned to my family. My husband James, who believed in me when I stopped believing in myself. My daughter Olivia, who reminds me every day what unconditional love looks like. That was the list. No mention of the Wilkins name. No acknowledgement of the people who had announced my exile. Just the truth. The City Hall auditorium in outer Boston was packed. Hundreds of community members, local leaders, and the mayor filled the seats. I walked to the podium in a simple navy dress, heart steady. Behind me in the second row, my family sat uninvited, my father in his usual golf club blazer, my mother beside him, Rebecca in a navy dress, Daniel and Megan perfectly arranged. My father leaned forward and whispered loudly enough for nearby seats to hear, "I'm her father." Dr. Klein introduced me, her words warm and precise. "Sarah has transformed our community programs, raised participation by 40%, and built trust where it was needed most. Please welcome your new director." I stepped up, looked out at the faces, and began. "Thank you, Dr. Klein, the board, my colleagues, and to my family, my husband James, who believed in me when no one else did. My daughter Olivia, who taught me unconditional love." I stopped. The room was silent for a beat. Then movement. My father stood, eyes glistening with practiced emotion, and walked toward the stage. "Sarah, sweetheart, surely you didn't forget your own father." He reached the steps, voice cracking for effect. I met his gaze for the first time in 4 years. My heart pounded hard for 2 seconds. Then calm returned. "You said I was no longer your daughter." I spoke evenly, amplified by the microphone. "4 years ago in the family chat you wrote, I chose to be a lowly employee, and you no longer saw me as your daughter." I held up my phone, the screenshot visible to the front rows. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "I've simply honored your words." A security guard gently guided him back. The room exploded in applause, slow at first, then thunderous, every hand rising in support. In that moment I felt my heart pounding, but I understood that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest way to protect yourself. Nicole kept me updated in the weeks and months after the ceremony. My father resigned from the community board shortly after parents began asking pointed questions about my speech at meetings. The whispers spread fast through the golf club network. People who once sought his advice on construction projects now changed the subject when his name came up. He lost several local contracts he had relied on for years, deals that evaporated as word of the ceremony circulated among homeowners and small business owners in outer Boston. The social consequences were quiet but devastating. Invitations stopped arriving. Conversations turned awkward, and the respect he had cultivated over decades crumbled under the weight of public perception. Rebecca deleted every family photo from her Instagram within days. Patients started messaging her office asking about the heart emoji reply that had surfaced in screenshots online, and soon one-star reviews appeared on Yelp, questioning her judgment and professionalism. She lost a steady stream of clients who preferred financial advisors without that kind of family baggage attached to their reputation. Daniel went completely silent. When Aunt Patricia pressed him for details, he dismissed it as blown out of proportion and refused to discuss it further. He steered clear of any mention of me in conversations, avoiding the potential scandal that could ripple through his legal circles. A handwritten letter arrived from my father about a year later on his usual cream stationery. "Sarah, I've written this many times. I was wrong. I was afraid of what people would think, afraid your choices reflected poorly on me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see now. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Your father." I read it twice, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said by my actions. Life in outer Boston settled into a peaceful rhythm. James and I took Olivia to the park on weekends for picnics under the oak tree. She ran ahead, laughing, collecting leaves and stones while we sat on a blanket, sharing stories from the week. I considered writing a book about the journey, but in the end, I chose to live it instead of retelling it. The quiet happiness we built together was more than enough. I came to understand my father's actions without excusing them. Boundaries aren't walls built from anger, they're doors you control to protect your peace. Real family chooses you without conditions, without demanding you prove your worth through a job title or a salary. Discrimination based on a profession can cost people their social networks in America, and the consequences often last far longer than the original hurt. The value I want anyone who hears this to take away is straightforward. Happiness doesn't require forgiving those who wounded you. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and keep walking. I don't hate them, but I also don't need to forgive them to prove I'm a good person. Sometimes choosing your own happiness is the best way to move forward. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.